أعوذ بالله العلي العظيم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. Let the people join. Nathan Hassan is coming. Saying, right, let's wait for a few other people to show up. Admit. Admit. Let's see here. Participants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, folks. Here we are in our third session for the Aql Sorch, the Red Intellect of Suhrawardi. I'm very sorry about last Sunday, but it was one of those things. I had to monitor the situation. It is reoccurring. Always triggered with Nuriel on the exact same time of the year whenever the weather is changing hereabouts. So we will get back to Ibn Arabi tomorrow again. I'll have a few things to say about that at the end of this session, and then we'll resume our reading of that text, of Khaisari's text, as the prelude to the Fusus al-Hikam tomorrow again. All right, so this is the treatise entitled The Red Intellect, Aql Sorch, by the Divine Master Shahabuddin Suhrawardi. In the name of God, the Compassionate, the Merciful, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Praise be to the King who rules over the two worlds, the existence of all that has been, is, and will be from his being. He is the first and the last, the outward and the inward, and he is the knower of all things. Quran 57:3. And prayers and salutations be upon his apostles to creation, especially upon Muhammad the chosen, by whom prophecy was sealed, and upon his companions and the learned in religion. God's contentment would be with them all. One of my friends asked me if the birds understand each other's languages. Yes, they do, I replied. How do you know? He asked. In the beginning, I said, when the former, Sabek, wanted to bring me into actuality, he created me in the form of a falcon. In the realm where I was, there were other falcons, and we spoke together and understood each other's words. How did you get to be the way you are now? He asked. I replied that one day the hunters, fate and destiny, laid the trap of foreordination and filled it with the grain of will, and in this manner they caught me. Then they took me from the realm where our nest was into another realm, where they stitched my eyes shut, put 4 different bonds on me, and appointed 10 wardens to watch over me. 4 bonds being the 4 elements, and the 10 wardens being the 10 intellects. So we're dealing once again with a recast arsenal of themes that we just encountered in the previous visionary treatise of the sound of great Gabriel's wind. Here they're reappearing in another way. 5 of them, that is these intellects, faced me with their backs towards the outside, while the other 5 stood facing the outside with their backs to me. The 5 who faced me kept me in the world of perplexity so that I forgot my nest, my realm, and everything I had known. I thought I'd always been the way I was then. After a time had passed, in this manner, my eyes were opened a bit. I looked with that much of my eyes and saw things I had never seen before. I was amazed. Every day, my eyes were gradually opened a little more, and I saw things that made me wonder. Finally, my eyes were completely open, and I was shown the world as it was. I looked at the bonds and fetters they had put on me and at the wardens. Will these 4 disagreeable fetters ever be taken from me? I asked myself. Will these wardens ever be discharged from me? Will my wings ever be loose so that it may fly for a moment in the air and be free of my bondage? After a while, I perceived one day that the wardens were not paying attention to me. I said to myself that I would never find a better opportunity, so I crept into a corner and, fettered as I was, escaped limping into the wilderness. There I saw someone approaching. I went forward and greeted him. He replied as politely as possible. As I looked at that person, I saw that his countenance and color were red. Thinking him young, I said, "Young man, where do you come from?" This again is the active intellect. Okay, so it's the character that we encountered in the last treatise now appearing in a different way, in a very charged symbolic form. "My son," he replied, "you have addressed me mistakenly. I am the first child of creation. You call me young? Why are your features not white?" I asked. "My features are white," he said. "I'm a luminous elder. But the person who captured you in the snare and placed these disagreeable fetters on you and appointed the wardens over you threw me long ago into a black pit. This color of mine, which appears red to you, is because of that. Otherwise, I am white and luminous. Every white thing that is connected to light appears red when it mixed with black, while the sunset at the beginning of evening or the red end of dawn, which is white where it is, connected to the sun's light. One side of it is towards the light, which is white, while the other side is toward the night, which is black. Therefore, it appears red. When the crescent moon rises, although its light is borrowed, it is nonetheless described as light. Since one side of it is toward the day and the other side toward night, it appears red. A flame has the same quality. Below it is white and above it is black smoke. Between the fire and smoke, it appears red. There are many such examples. Then I said, "Elder, where do you come from?" He replied, "From beyond Mount Goth, where my residence is." Your nest too was there, but you have forgotten it. Now, before I go on, in this particular treatise, and pretty much throughout most of Suhrawardi's works, Mount Goth represents the barrier between the worlds of delimitation and the worlds of the absolute, right? So when somebody, a wayfarer or a soul, reaches Mount Goth itself, the next way station is beyond the world. It's in the worlds of the absolute. It's the worlds of Jabarut, etc. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I am a traveler," he said. "I continue wander about the world and look at marvelous things." "What wonders have you seen in the world?" I asked. 7 things, he replied. First, Mount Goth, which is our realm. Second, the pearl that glows by night. Third, the Tuba, the blessed tree. Fourth, the 12 workshops. Fifth, David's chainmail. Sixth, the sword of Balarak. And 7, the spring of life. "Tell me of these things," I said. First of all, he began, "Mount Goth surrounds the world and consists of 11 mountains. When you are delivered of your bondage, you will go there, for you have been brought from there, and eventually everything that exists returns to its initial form." I asked how to get there. "The way is difficult," he said. "First of all, there are 2 mountains in the way, one hot and the other cold. The heat and cold of these 2 are beyond measure." "That is easy," said I. "I shall cross the hot mountain during the winter and the one that is cold during the summer." "That would be a mistake," he said, "because the climate of that realm never changes." "What is the distance of this mountain?" I asked. "However you go," he replied, "you can only reach the first stage, like a compass, one leg of which rests on the center of the circle and the other on the line of the perimeter. No matter how much it revolves, it still comes back to the place it started." "Can one make a hole through these mountains and then go through the hole?" I asked. "It is not possible to make a hole," he said. "However, that person who has the aptitude can, without making a hole, pass instantly like balsam oil, which will pass through from the palm of the hand to the back of the hand if it is held up to the sun until it is worn. This it can do by virtue of a certain quality it possesses. If you too have the ability to pass through mountains, you can cross both mountains in an instant. How can I obtain this quality? I asked. I will tell you as I speak, if you understand. When I have crossed the two mountains, I asked, will the rest be easy or not? It will be easy, but only if one knows how. Some remain as perpetual prisoners in these two mountains. Others reach the third mountain and are stuck there. Others reach the fourth, fifth, and so on to the 11th. The cleverer the bird is, the farther he will go. Now that you have spoken of Mount Gough, describe the pearl that glows by night, I said. The pearl that glows by night is also on Mount Gough, he said, but it is on the third mountain. From its existence, darkest night is brightened, but it does not remain in one state. Its brilliance comes from the tuba tree. When it is opposite the tuba tree, the side on which you are appears as bright as burning sulfur. When it goes a little in the direction of the tuba tree, a bit of its disk appears black, although the rest remains bright. The closer it gets to the tuba tree, the more of its brightness appears black on the side where you are. Nonetheless, the semicircle that faces the tuba tree is always bright. When it is completely in front of the tuba tree, the whole side facing you appears black, although the side toward the tree is bright. Again, as it passes away from the tree, a little bit appears bright, and the farther it gets from the tree, the brighter the side toward you become. Not that the light is increasing, but its body is receiving more light and the blackness is decreasing. And so on until again stands directly opposite when its whole body receives light. Here's an example of how it works. Make a hole through the middle of a ball and pass something through the hole. Then fill a bowl with water and put the ball in the bowl so that half of it is in the water. Now, in a moment, all surfaces of the ball will have been touched 10 times by the water. Yet anyone looking from below the water will always see half of the ball in the water. If that person who was looking from directly beneath the middle of the bowl looks a little to one side of the middle, he will not be able to see half the ball in the water. For as he moves from the center of the bowl towards the edge, that part of the ball that is not directly in front of the viewer's eye cannot be seen. Instead, he will be able to see a little of the ball that is out of the water. The farther toward the edge of the ball he looks from, the less of the ball he sees in the water, and the more he sees of it out of the water. When he looks directly from the edge of the bowl, he sees half in the water and half out of the water. If he looks from above the edge of the bowl, he will see less in the water and more out of the water, and so on until finally he looks at the ball from directly above the center of the bowl, when he will see all of the ball that is out of the water. Now, if anyone says that one can see neither water nor ball from beneath the bowl, we reply that one certainly can see if the bowl is made of crystal or something transparent. Now let the viewer circle around where the ball and bowl are so that he can see them in this manner. The pearl that glows by night and the tuba tree circle in the same manner around the viewer. What is the tuba tree and where is it? I asked. The tuba tree is a huge tree, he said. Anyone who is celestial can see it when he goes to paradise. In the midst of the 11 mountains I spoke of is a mountain, and it is on that mountain. Does it have fruit? I asked. Every variety of fruit that you can see here in this world is on that tree. These fruits that you have here are produced by it. Were it not for that tree, you would have no fruit, no trees, no herbs, and no plants. What connection is there between it and fruit, trees, and herbs? I asked. The sea mork has its nest at the top of the tuba. At the dawn, the sea mork leaves its nest and spreads its wings over the earth. From the effects of its wing, fruit appears on trees and plants on the earth. I said to the old man, I've heard that Zal was raised by sea mork and that Rostam was able to kill Esfandiar with the sea mork's help. This is now taking directly the narratives of the great Iranian epic poem by Ferdowsi known as the Shahnameh, the Epic of the Kings. Yes, the old man said, it is true. How was that? I asked. When Zal was born, his hair and face were white. His father Sam ordered him cast into the wilderness, and his mother, who had suffered much pain in giving birth, agreed when she saw that her son was hideous to behold. So Zal was cast into the wilderness. It was winter and cold, and no one expected him to live long. But after a few days, his mother received from her pain and began to have compassion for her son. She said, "Let me go at once to the wilderness and see how my son is." When she came to the wilderness, she saw her son alive beneath the sea mork's wings. He saw his mother and smiled, and his mother took him up in her arms and nursed him. She was about to take him home, but she said, "I cannot return home without learning how Zal survived in these few days." She put him back where he had been beneath the sea mork's wings and hid herself nearby. When night fell and the sea mork left the wilderness, a gazelle came to Zal and suckled him. When he had fed, the gazelle sheltered him with her own body that no harm might come to him. His mother rose, took her son from the gazelle, and carried him home. "What is the mystery in that?" I asked. "I asked the same thing of the sea mork," said the old man. "It said, Zal was born under the gaze of the Tuba. We could not allow him to perish. We gave the gazelle's fowl to the hunter and placed compassion for Zal in the gazelle's heart, so it would tend him by night, while by day I took him under my wing." "What about Rostam and Esfandiar?" I asked. "Rostam was unable to defeat Esfandiar," he replied. "When he returned home wounded, his father Zal humbled himself before the sea mork. Now the sea mork has a characteristic such that if a mirror or something like that be held up to it, any eye that looks into the mirror will be dazzled. So Zal had a breastplate made from iron and polished. This he placed on Rostam, and on his head a polished helmet. He also covered his horse with mirrors. Then he sent Rostam into the battlefield opposite the sea mork. Esfandiar was forced to come face to face with Rostam, and when he drew near, the rays of the sea mork fell on the breastplate and mirrors, the reflection from which pierced Esfandiar's eyes and dazzled them. He could see nothing. Since he had never experienced anything like that before, he imagined that he had been wounded in both eyes, fell from his horse, and perished at the hand of Rostam. The two feathered shaft they talk about must be the sea mork's two wings. I asked the old man if he thought that there was but one sea mork in the world. He who knows not supposes it to be so, he said. Otherwise, at every instant a sea mork must come from the Tuba tree to the earth. And the one that is on the earth must simultaneously cease to exist. That is, at every moment a sea mork comes while the one that is here disappears. Just as one is coming toward the earth, the other is going from the Tuba toward the 12 workshops, meaning the 12 constellations. Old man, I asked, what are these 12 workshops? Know, first of all, he answered, that when our king wanted to make his kingdom flourish, he made our realm flourish first. Then he put us to work and ordered the foundation of the 12 workshops. In each workshop, he established several apprentices. Then he put these apprentices to work, making another workshop beneath the 12, and in this workshop, he established a master. That master he put to work making another workshop under the first one. Then he put the second master to work on another workshop, and another master was made beneath the second workshop, and so on until there was 7 workshops with the master appointed to each. So we have 12 constellations and 7 planets here. Then he gave a robe of honor to each of the apprentices in the 12 workshops. To the first master, he gave a robe of honor likewise, and to the 2 of the 12 workshops above were put under his care. The second master was also given a robe of honor, and 2 of the 12 workshops were entrusted to his case. So also the 3rd and 4th masters were given robes of honor, but the 4th master was given a robe made of a brocade, more beautiful than any of the others. Only one of the 12 workshops was entrusted to him, but he was commanded to oversee all 12. The fifth and sixth masters were given what the first, second, and third had been given. When it came the turn of the seventh, there was only one workshop remaining of the 12. It was given to him, but he was given no robe of honor. The seventh master cried out, "Every master has 2 workshops, and I have but 1. They all have a robe of honor, and I have none." The king commanded that the 2 additional workshops be founded below his 1 workshop, and he was given the running of them. Below all the workshops, a field was established, and the working of that field was entrusted to the 7th master, meaning the moon. It was also settled that from the brocade of the 4th master's garb, half should be continually given to the 7th master as a prerequisite that the others should have new garbs every moment, like the Seymour we have just spoken of. "Old man," I said, "what do they weave in these workshops?" "Mostly brocade," he said, "and also everything that cannot be comprehended by anyone. They also weave David's chainmail in these workshops." "What is David's chainmail?" I asked. "These various fetters that have been placed on you are David's chainmail," he said. "How is it made?" I asked. "In every 3 of the 12 workshops above, they make 1 ring, so in the 12, 4 rings are made incompletely. After each one of them has worked on them, they are shown to the 7th master. When they come to his hand, they are sent into the field, where they remain incomplete for a period of time. When the 4 rings are cast onto 1 ring and all the rings are pierced, then they catch a falcon like you and put the chainmail over its neck in order to finish it." "How many rings does each piece of chainmail have?" I asked. "If you can tell me how many drops are in the ocean, I will tell you how many rings are in a coat of chainmail." "How can one get this chainmail off?" I asked. "With the sword of Ballarak," he said. "Where can one find the sword of Ballarak?" I asked. "In our realm, there's an executioner," he replied. "That sword is in his hand. When each coat of chainmail has served its time, the executioner strikes it with the sword so that all the rings fall to pieces." "Does it affect the one who is wearing the coat of mail when it is struck?" I asked. "It does," he said. "Some are hurt so much that if anyone were to live for 100 years and during his whole lifetime do nothing but think of the worst pain he could, he would never be able to imagine the pain inflicted by the sword of Ballarak. For others, it is easier." "What should I do that the pain be easy for me?" I asked. "Find a spring of water," he answered, "and pour water from it over your head so that this chainmail may slip from your body and you may be safe from the sword's blow, for its water makes the chainmail loose. When it is loosened, the bow of the sword is easy." "Where is the spring of life?" I asked. "In the darkness," he said. "If you seek it, lace your shoes like Khidr and take the road of trust that you may reach the darkness." "In which direction is the way?" I asked. "In any direction you go," he said. "If you go, you will arrive." "And what is the sign of the darkness?" I asked. "Blackness," he said. "And you yourself are in the darkness, but you don't know it. He who goes when he sees himself in the darkness knows that he has been in the darkness prior to that he has never seen light. So the first step of those who would go is this, and from here one can progress. Now, if anyone reaches this stage, he will be able to go on from there. A claimant to the spring of life must wander much in the darkness. If he is worthy of the spring, in the end he will see light after the darkness. Then it is not necessary for him to follow the light. For it is from heaven and rests over the spring of life. If he travels and bathes in the spring, he will be safe from the blow of the sword of Ballarak." Poem: "Be killed by the blade of love that you may attain everlasting life. For no trace of the living is seen on Bu Yahya's sword. Whoever bathes in that spring will never be polluted. Whoever finds the meaning of reality will have reached the spring. Whoever emerged from the spring will have achieved the ability of balsam oil, which if your if you hold your hand up to the sun and put a drop of it on your palm, will come out of the back of your hand. If you become cheder, you can easily cross Mount Qaf. When I told this adventure to that dear friend, he said, "You are that hawk that was caught and now hunts. Here, bind me to your saddling, for I am not a bad catch. I am the hawk that the hunters of the world seek at every instant. My prey are black-eyed gazelles that rain wisdom from their eyes like tears. In our presence, they are far from speaking words like these. When they near us, they whittle meanings like these." And that was the visionary treatise of the Red Intellect, Ak les Surch, of Suhrawardi. And now the floor is open to all of you. Anyone wants to jump in, just jump in.
I guess I'll start off, Sheikh. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, so I guess I'll start off with a very basic question. So he talks about how he's a falcon. I'd like to know if there are other birds that people, hawks, eagles. Are there ostriches that keep their head buried in the sand? I feel like there are.
Um, Hawk and falcon are basically in this trope the same bird. That's why Thaxton kind of starts with falcon, ends with hawk. The word in Arabic is sagar with a sad, and the word in Persian is shaheen, right? And Suhrawardi uses shaheen in the Persian, but the Arabic is sagar. This I have also used this symbolism in my own visionary treatise, The Soul of Holiness, and this particular bird is packed with symbolism because, obviously, in the medieval times, this was the royal bird. It was the royal falcon. So when the kings would go on the hunt, the king would always take the royal falcon with him, and it was the royal falcon that intercepted or found, particular prey during the hunt. And even if there wasn't an issue of a hunt at play, the royal falcon is a very, very important symbol. Even prior to the medieval period, the falcon plays a central role in the mythos of the people of Mesopotamia, Europe, and very significantly in ancient Egypt. The falcon is the symbol of Horus, Ra-Harachti, the son of Osiris and Isis, who avenges the usurped father, right? But in this particular trope of it represents the royal bird that is trapped beyond its union with in the hand of its king.
Okay, yeah, because I was wondering if there was any significance between the falcon being a hunting bird and fate and destiny being hunters. They're the
Well,
ones.
fate and destiny being hunters, the symbolism here is that the hunter becomes the hunted, right? Because the falcon is originally a royal bird. If it is separated from its royal hand, then it itself becomes prey. So that thereby destiny and fate are now the hunters of the royal hunter, which is the falcon.
I see. And when the falcon rediscovers itself, then fate and destiny become its. Okay. Thank you.
Can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
I was wondering something very similar. I was thinking that the falcon was representing fate. If we differentiate fate from destiny, I hate to bring him up, but in the way that like Guénon does, where fate is kind of what happens to you and destiny is kind of, when you become and take charge of your destiny. So I was thinking that the falcon represents the an earlier stage where you're subject to fate, and then the falcon becomes the hawk and turns fate into destiny.
That's a absolutely wonderful reading of that. Yes, wholeheartedly, I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And while my head is spinning from that, and I've got a few questions there, but I'm just going to like try to collect myself for a moment
We'll
and
write
let
them
someone
down,
else
and
speak
then
first.
whenever you want to come back to them, we'll explore them.
Okay. I'll come back in a moment, actually. But that
Sure.
was all I had for this moment.
Sure thing.
Can we make a third reading of it? That the falcon here, it is the soul before it's to be born in this material world, which is the when it is put in the material body, it is fettered by the hunters.
Before it is put in the material body, it is fettered by the hunters. Yeah, you could argue that. That's a valid way to put it, but the actual physical coming into the world would be when a soul is conscious of its being fettered by fate and destiny. Okay, but it's still what you're saying is also as a valid. So if we take the Platonic conception that the soul that comes into the world falls from the realm of the eternal, right? And as it falls, once it is fallen, it becomes subject to the laws of limitation in this world. So Suhrawardi is presupposing this Platonic idea that the pre-existence of a soul before it has come into this world. So this is part of the subtext here, right? So you can say what you said. Yeah, that is a valid way of putting it. Yeah.
Okay, the next one, when my eyes were open a bit in the process. Here, he's talking of a spiritual vision or something more spatial.
It can, well, I mean, a spiritual vision sometimes can appear as being spatial. It doesn't necessarily have to be just an intellectual intuition. It can also be an actual vision that is beheld, and that is the awakening. Yeah.
Okay. You already commented that the red intellect, it is the active intellect. But here my question is, since it is said that I am the first child of
Of
creation,
creation
of
of this world, of the realm of the sublunary, right? Of the world of Kon facade, which is what the
oh, okay.
nature of the sublunary realm is. So the active intellect, by that definition, is the firstborn of that creation. Yeah.
So it is not the totality of creation which encompasses the mujarradat. It
No,
is
no, no.
the wealth of
He said that.
heaven
He
and
says
earth.
that about himself. He doesn't say that about all these other masters, etc., above him. It's just about him.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. D- Uh, this answers my question. Okay, then uh, the next one about Mount Qaf
Mm.
and its 11 mountains. Mountains, are they the 11 heavenly spheres?
You can look at it this way. Let me say a little bit about Mount Goff. This is a very important point. Mount Goff is a quintessentially Iranian image that finds its way into the Sufi lexicon. And so the range of the mountains, this is all based on the Alborz Mountains of Iran, right? With the biggest peak of the Alborz Mountain being Mount Damavand. that act as a sort of sacred anima mundi to the ancient Iranians. And in medieval Persian Sufi literature, Ishraqi illuminationist literature in particular, it is reread back into it. Then you have, for example, a lot of Iranian Sufis making the commentaries that the Surat al-Qaf is a reference to Mount Qaf, although Qaf in its origins is actually an Iranian motif, not an Arab one. It's an interesting gloss. It's a subjective gloss. It's valid on its own level, but that is what it means. And so the Alborz Mountains of Iran have 12 peaks, the highest of which is Mount Damoat. So this is where that comes from. But what Suhrawardi is doing is taking the physical mountains, mountain range, and then using that as a symbol to talk about the constellations, the 10 intellects, etc. Yeah.
Because this image, it appeared already in similar way
Yes.
in the previous one.
Yeah.
To put straightforward the cosmology, when so the first two heavenly, and you can correct me, the 11 heavenly spheres, the one which is rounds 24 hours, which is the invisible one. The next one, the fixed stars, 7 of the 7 planets, and Arsh and Kursi. Or
Yeah.
his scheme is another one.
Yeah. That's it.
Okay, okay. And then the first two spheres, the hot one and the cold one, of which he is speaking. Can you say a little bit more about them? Which are they and what is their significance? The way is difficult, he said. First of all, there are two mountains in the way, one hot and the other cold.
There are several ways to unpack it. That the hottest mountain represents the symbol of scorching sensation. So, Aries, for example, the constellation, the first of the constellation, is a fiery symbol, right? Then the coldest of the cold then represents the ultimate in reverse of that temperament, right? So this hot and cold mountain are basically the extremes of temperaments. Okay, if you take it in a psycho-emotional or psycho-spiritual sense, then the fire represents anger and all of the irascible elements of the human psyche, and the cold are all those other concupiscent or similar elements of the human psyche, right? And he's told that he can't actually cannot make a whole. You can't bypass these emotions, which is quite a in the way that he's framing them as mountains, it's quite an ingenious psychological observation that not only modern psychology affirms, but also ancient numerology likewise affirms. You cannot, in your spiritual quests or in your process of what Jung calls your individuation, bypass any emotion. You have to integrate them by passing through them, right? And this is why a lot of conventional religious approaches to psychology are very schizophrenic, because they believe that the emotions, the extremes of the human emotions, are bad and counterproductive and must be repressed. This is an illusion, and some of the commentators have switched on to this. Other commentators have been clueless to it. But this is an affirmation that these sorts of emotions, these extremes of which they come from, have to be integrated by passing through them. You cannot just suppress them.
Okay. And then just a follow up on this. When the initial step is made, He says, when I have crossed the two mountains, will the rest be easy or not? It will be easy, but only if one knows how. So, that uh, the whole journey is dangerous journey, and one can may fall in the traps of the journey, but the initial part is the most difficult. So you have to start journey. If you start journey, you have passed the most difficult part. It is this what is meant or something other?
That is what he's meaning. Remember, we already encountered this in the first treatise of the birds, where the warning is given not to alight these 8 mountains as you're passing, because you can get caught in one of them. And if you get caught in one of them on your journey, that's it. You're stuck. So this is basically re-articulating the same motif that he said in the very first treatise, but right now with a little bit more clarity about what these are, right? And just remember, these other mountains are beyond Mount Goth. They're on the other side of Goth. So Goth is the isthmus between the sensible and the non-sensible, or the Magul, the intelligible, and the Gaib, the absent, right? And it's very interesting that these two hot and cold mountains are kind of put in the range just immediately after Mount Goth, right? Because most of these emotions, whatnot, are not immediately discernible, even though they affect a discernible behavior or perception and whatnot that we find in our lives and in the world out there.
Okay. Uh, so, little bit about the symbolics of here the story of Zal. Zal was born under the gaze of the tuba tree. Does it have a deeper? What does it mean? He was born under the gaze of the tuba tree.
The tuba tree is the spiritual world or God, right? Because the tuba tree is also synonymous oftentimes in literature, not just the mystical literature, also in a lot of the tafsir literature. It's made synonymous with the Sidratul Muntaha, the low tree beyond which there is no passing or no limit. And there's a limit that nothing passes. So this is a symbol for the standard of God, the standard of the spiritual world, the light of lights, etc. It's not the light of lights itself, but it is its primary standard. And to be born under its gaze, it means that you have the spiritual mark. From the moment that you have been born, you have that mark of the spiritual world upon you.
And the last questions, Saidi, they are about the spring of life. Of life. Even I feel it, but uh, what's the deeper meaning which stays behind it?
Well, I mean, in Persian mystical literature, the spring of life, Ab Hayat, is immediately associated with Khidr. We get a reference to this vaguely in the Quran itself, but in the Sufi literature of Iran, this is really elaborated and made into a full-blown narrative. That the immortality of Khidr comes from that spring of life when he's led to it in the pitch black darkness of that realm where the spring occurs. And once he drinks of that water, then his complete spiritual eyes are open to heaven itself and to God, right? So that is that symbolism that all throughout this journey. And it's very interesting that he puts this as the very last element, because already within this treatise, by the time that we get to the spring of life, there is a journey that has already been made. right? That the red intellect is talking about. And so as one comes to the very end of the journey, you encounter the spring of life. You're not at the presence yet, right? It is only when you encounter the spring of life and drink of its water that finally everything else about you opens up and you perceive God as a result of you drinking the spring of life. And that whole symbolism is associated with Khidr.
A little bit more about the darkness and the light which are associated with it. Can we say that, for example, the light is the gnosis or the divine knowledge? The darkness, on the other side, it is the internal realization that we don't know the truth.
It's
We
all
are
of
in
that.
the search of it.
Sure, it is all of that. It is what you said. It is also um, the darkness represents the consciousness not aware of God's presence, right? And when it is not cognizant or noetic of the presence of God, however far it travels on the path, it is in the darkness, whether about itself or whether about the nature of the spiritual world. It is only at the point that it realizes that it has been in the darkness, finds the spring of life and drinks from it, does his eyes open to true gnosis and to the reality of God. And this symbol now can be applied to a multiplicity of things. The meeting, the practice that bears fruit, the encounter with the teacher, whether this teacher be a physical one or a super sensible one. It can be many, many things.
Exactly at this point we are mentioning, he who goes when he sees himself in the darkness knows that he has been in the darkness prior to that and that he has never seen light. Because this sounds very similar to the Socratic aporia. The moment you realize that you don't know, because previous to that you were in the illusion that you know. And it resembles to me what you are saying, that the first condition which the Iranian sheikhs put to their murids, to forget anyone that they thought knew about religion and start afresh.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
That's great. Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to discuss the image of the sword Balarak. I'm not familiar with the term, where it comes from. I'm assuming maybe Iranian mythology.
Yes.
I see the symbol of death in it for sure, of transformation. And also this very strange and interesting discourse about the blow of Balarak being less painful if you cast off the elemental chainmail.
Mm.
Can you discuss this imagery more, please?
Well, the process of coming to the point of death, right, can be either a traumatic experience, with the death itself being the most traumatic and the kind of culmination of that trauma, or if you traverse the wayfaring, the spiritual path, as you begin to emotionally, psychologically, and psychically disengage from the mental, psychic, emotional pull of the dunya, then the blow of death will be just a very light thing. So the sword of Balarak is a sort of a archetype very similar to the Zulfiqar, right? The double-edged sword. Except here he's using Balarak rather than Zulfiqar. But it's the symbolism is almost exactly the same between Zulfiqar and Balarak, right? So this is basically what Suhrawardi is saying, or the active intellect is saying to him.
And it's been a long time since I've touched the Shahnameh. Is that from the Shahnameh? Is there a story that
Yes,
references that?
there's a story that this shows up, and the fact that he employs the story of Zal and Isfandiar and Rostam is quite interesting, because here we're in this particular treatise we are having a convergence of the Quran with Zoroastrian mythos, with the ancient Persian mythos, and Hermeticism and astrology, all converging into a singular narrative about his cosmology.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's very creative, actually.
Yeah, extremely creative. Yeah. And then there's the bird imagery, which is always standing for the soul, at various stages of its development. Here
Right.
is the falcon, who is the hawk, Shaheen, which is the royal bird.
And going back to the beginning of the story, it's interesting to read these treatises. The intellects seem to get different depictions in these
Yes.
stories.
Yeah.
So in this one, the intellects are depicted as guards of the captured soul, and I was fascinated by their orientation. Some are with their backs to the outside, and others are with their backs toward the captive,
Yes.
facing the other intellects.
Yeah.
And of course, we see that paradigm in other intellect cosmologies where the intellect is gazing upon the intellect above it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's interesting to me here, the intellects seem to function maybe a little more archonically in that sort of
Yes.
classical Gnostic sense.
Yeah, they're definitely acting in that sense in this particular treatise. Yeah. Because that's also their function. So they have, as then he goes elaborately, explaining what the functions of these things are. He starts by telling them, what level. One is, some of them are operating on a botany level. Others are on a very Zahiri level, dealing with the Kohen and Fasad degeneration and the corruption of the world. So those of them looking in are subtle. Those of them looking out are coarse.
Fascinating. Thank you.
You're very
I'll let
welcome.
someone else go.
Yeah, this is a real this is a very unique feature of this particular treatise, because it then kind of glosses in a very interesting way on the last treatise, the Sound of Gabriel's, which is in a very, very interesting way about what that makes it more animated, more 3D.
Right. These treatises have elements that really do riff off of each other, but he
Oh,
does
yeah.
different things with them in each of
Yes.
them.
Yeah. And this is basically this is my argument with Walbridge, that he just refuses to accept that, once you put all these various elements of these treatises of Suhrawardi together, you basically have the philosophical argument of the Hikmat al-Ishraq itself. And then you take the Hikmat al-Ishraq and read that then through that lens of the symbolism that we encountered in these visionary narratives. And then that book becomes itself more intelligible. Rather than just
Yeah, I think that's probably attributable to an academic bias toward
Oh, yeah.
rational discourse over the mythic, and we're obviously dealing with the mythic here.
Ooh. So the philosophical prose is actually a key, in a sense, that in itself is opening the door to the symbolic. And which is, if you read the very final section of the Hikmat al-Ishraq, what he recommends to the novice, that they fast for 40 days and go through a 40-day retreat before opening the book and reading it. Why would that be necessary if it's just a straight intellectual text?
Right. That's very practical advice, and philosophy may once have had practices associated with it, but in the academic world today, it's all in the head.
Yeah. Yep.
Fascinating.
So I'll jump in again.
Sure.
The David's chainmail. So we're talking it's the physical body complete with all of its senses, inner and outer.
Yeah.
And okay, and so speaking of the inward facing guards and the outward facing guards, I was reading through the introduction again, and basically that's an allusion to the senses and the faculties. So the outer senses are facing outward and the inner faculties are facing inward.
Yeah.
So just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah.
Just as these treatises are each building on the ones before them and commenting on the ones that went before them, each of these various tropes in each of the treatises itself is also then commenting on each other as well. And just remember, the main interlocutor here is Suhrawardi himself. So he's describing his process of spiritual wayfaring, and the red intellect, which is another manifestation of the active intellect that we met in the last treatise, is his higher alter ego that is describing his situation.
Right.
And as we talked about last week, everything under the sublunar realm is the creation of the active intellect. Therefore, everything being experienced is occurring by that rule as well. So it is Suhrawardi describing his own process to himself.
Yeah. Right. Those characters in the old Persian tale,
Shahnameh,
I think that
Zal and Isfandiar and Rustam.
Zal, right, is Zal, or am I thinking of some? I'm not sure which one I'm thinking of, but is one of them equivalent to the hitter character?
Yeah, that's a good observation. Zal would be, because Zal was that's a very good connection that you make. Zal and Khidr have a very interesting parallelism going on in this treatise, and he's doing this inferentially. Zal is abandoned by his mother because there's a war, and the king doing the whole Herod thing, wanting to kill the firstborn. So Zal is an albino, and he is taken into the wilderness and put there, and eventually found by the Simorgh, the griffin, and is raised by the griffin, and then comes back later as he grows up, to confront Esfandiar, his father. And that whole story has a lot of interesting byways. There's several good kind of minor translations of the Shahnameh available. One that was done by Dick Davis about 20 years ago, which is worth getting, and that tells that whole story of Zal. So Zal is this wild man that is raised by, in the mythopoeic universe of Iran, is raised by the ultimate animal, who has both its foot in the material world and in the spiritual, and that is the Simorgh, was the griffin.
Right.
And then, so that becomes its mother in its sense, even though Roxana is his mother in the story. The one who raises him is this spiritual animal, the Simorgh, the griffin. So that there's always this suggestion that Zal is kind of in a liminal space between the world and the hereafter. He's both immortal and mortal at the same time, in the same way that Khidr is.
Okay. All right, because there's also the gazelle. So how do you break that down then with between the Simorgh and the gazelle?
The gazelle is, in this particular treatise, the gazelle acts as the female. The gazelle is a very feminine-like animal. So the gazelle acts as the feminine counterpart to the male Simorgh in this particular treatise. Albeit that whether we're talking about Attar or some of the other treatises, or even in the Shahnameh itself, the gender of the Simorgh is usually alluded to be female rather than male. But this is something that Suhrawardi here is introducing to create this kind of male-female kind of dichotomy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Good thing.
My connection was weak, but I think it should be okay because I turned my camera off. But just so you know, it might go out. I just wanted to go back to the symbol of the duba tree and the Simorgh in relation to that. You mentioned, some possible like significations of the duba. When I was reading this, I got a very solar kind of image from that, and also the Simorgh. I mean, the first reason was because of the way that the pearl is described. It sounds just like the moon.
Yes.
and it's revolving around the tuba tree. And, Suhrawardi would be the earth, I guess. And
Yes.
so I was thinking of this as a kind of noetic archetype of the sun, moon, and
Yep. And
earth.
the conjunction of the sun and the moon with the earth upon which they stand, which is extremely alchemical symbol. There's a word for it in which I forget right now, but we have several different extremely important symbolism and artwork around this. So it bears a very striking high alchemical symbolism here. You're 100% right to look at it from that perspective, that the tuba tree can be taken as a solar symbolism in a arboric kind of setting, with the pearl being lunar, and then the one who visions it being the plane, upon which it shines, which then means that the conjunction of the energies within the vision or the body of the sonic.
Yeah, that's great. Because otherwise, that helps bring it down to earth. Because otherwise, it's so puzzling. It's like, what is he talking about? But yeah, that kind of like sacred marriage that makes sense here. So if the tuba is a kind of solar image, I was thinking of the simurg as being a kind of ishraq.
Yes.
That it's the illumination.
Yes.
And then we have the through the ishraq we have the creation of the fruits and plants on earth.
Yes.
And this matches up really nicely with what Mullah Sadra says about the tuba tree too, that there's, from this tree are born the he calls them the ma'arif wal akhlaq, the sciences and the virtues in the soul. So that was just the way that I was reading that constellation. But then something that confirms it later is this idea that, and this also sounds very Akbarian and Sadrian. He says that every instant the simurg must come from the tuba tree to the earth, and the one that is on the earth must simultaneously cease to exist. So if this is an ishraq, this is a kind of recurring illumination.
Yes.
He's talking about here.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good observation. Yeah. 100% endorsed by me, what you just said. This is exactly what the symbolism is representing. So the simurg is the personification or the theophany of the person of the ishraq, of the illumination itself.
Mm-hmm. And then there's just one related to that. There's something that kind of threw me. It seems like he also wants to say, because a little bit later he says, when he's talking about the workshops and the garbs of the masters, he says that from the brocade of the fourth master's garb, half should be continually given to the seventh master as a perquisite, and that the others should have new garbs every moment, like the simurg we have just spoken of. And so that gives me an image of a kind of, that there's also at some level, there's a recurrence of creation in the celestial world.
Yes.
But this sounds much more like Mullah Sadra than it does like Suhrawardi, because...
Well, actually, it sounds more like Mullah Sadra and Ibn Arabi than Suhrawardi generation. This is what I'm saying, that Suhrawardi himself cannot be that easily pigeonholed into this kind of position that some people have made him out to just by reading the Hikmat al-Ishraq. Because what he is invoking very, very directly is that passage of the Quran, Kullu yawmin huwa fi shanin. Every day he's upon some new task. And this is what it's invoking. And so once we then look at the way that Ibn Arabi frames this a few generations from Suhrawardi, a few short generations, not even generations, it's like within a decade or so, then this is exactly the same thing that Suhrawardi is alluding to. And this process is not just going on in the realm, in the sublunar realm of generation of corruption, the Kon and Fasad, but he's also asserting that it occurs on these higher levels as well, which is something that both Ibn Arabi and Mullah Sadra assume, but don't really outright say in the way that Suhrawardi just said it.
Well, I was thinking of, there's a couple of points in the Wisdom of the Throne where Sadra is really making a point to disagree with the Aristotelian Ptolemaic cosmology, where he does seem to say that this substantial motion is also found in the spheres. But the reason that this kind of threw me a bit is because Suhrawardi explicitly denies that, and it's in his prayers to the planets. He explicitly says this each time. He says that you're, to the planet, you're in a sphere without Gon and without Fasad. And
well, without
right.
Kon and Fasad in relation to the sphere below itself, but that doesn't obviate, the kind of recreation at each moment. You can have a tajdid khalq on each level of being without this necessarily implying the same kind of generation and corruption of the realm below it. It could be subject to its own laws that from the point of view of the lower realm is something else, not what we experience as Kon and Fasad. So here in this particular treatise, and this is where, as I argue, I think even many, if you read the prayers in their Arabic, right, you begin to see that the diction that Suhrawardi is using, besides its devotional element, he is also making certain very subtle philosophical assertions within these prayers. And once you look at the language very clearly, everything under the light of lights is subject to its own level of generation and corruption. So that, in a sense, Suhrawardi is actually already presupposing the Sadrian and Akbarian argument, which is one of the things I have contended for years in his own illuminationist diction and lexicon.
Okay, that's great. I'll have to think about those prayers in that light. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No worries.
So continues from this point that this process, the two wings of the Simurg, one over the earth, which happens the process of Kaun and Fasad, the other wing of the Simurg, the light which comes to other spheres and so on from the source. And the fact that the same way when the Simurgs come to the earth, the previous one ceases to exist and new one comes. It is the constant phase from Allah Ta'ala.
And remember, in this particular treatise, okay, this is asserted towards the end of the treatise where, the Suhrawardi has already gone through most of the stages of its wayfaring. So this is a very, very, very sensitive and crucial point. It's not just a rhetorical flourish that he's putting in there. He's showing us a very distinct element of his own metaphysics, that this constant emanation process, illumination process, ishraq, phase, etc. This is going on all the time. And what does he tell us where it's coming from? It's saying it's coming from the Tuba tree itself. The Tuba tree, like I said, symbolizing the spiritual world, or here the light of lights as a symbol of it, right? So what he's telling us is that everything is constantly being renewed by the light of lights. Everything, including these realms above us, leading up to the light of lights.
Yes, that's basically the Haraka Jawhariya with the words of Suhrawardi here.
Yeah. Yep. Anybody else want to say anything?
Well, just since, oh, sorry, Reyes.
It's okay, Jeff. You can go ahead, please.
Well, just going off of what Hassan was talking about, he mentioned the two feathers of Simorg's, Simorg's two wings, and it makes me reread this part. I was still thinking about this part about the two feathered shafts they talk about must be the Simorg's two wings, and right after, uh, what's his name here?
Heather?
No, it's Isfandiar. You know, he was dazzled in both of his eyes.
Yes.
He thought he was wounded in both eyes, so he fell off his horse and perished at the hand of Rustam. So, and that's where it says the two feathered shaft.
Yeah.
They talk about must be Simorg's two wings. So I wonder how those two wings relate to the two eyes,
The two
if
eyes.
that makes any sense, of Isfandiar.
Because one eye, I mean, symbolic, it would represent the eye turned towards the world, and the other one is turned towards the other world.
Yeah, okay.
When this eye is dazzled, it is dazzled by what is dazzled by the light of lights, by God, the master of both the world of the apparent and the world of the hidden.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thought that was it.
Okay, so I'll go on with what I was wondering. So I'm just making sure I'm correct about this. The impression I was getting about this chainmail that's sort of created by the these people in this workshop in the context of this struggle through the darkness. I think I'm getting the chain of events correct here, right? I was sort of thinking of that chainmail as being something like the persona, the identity that we all wear.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would make sense that it would contaminate us once that sword pierces through us at the time of death. I was wondering if that was a good reading of it.
Very much so. Anybody else want to say anything? Okie dokie. Obviously for next week, we're going to read the treatise immediately after it, which is A Day with a Group of Sufis. And this is a very interesting one. So everything that we have read so far in the last three treatises is going to be integrated in a very different way by Suhrawardi. So we'll leave that here for this week for this. Tomorrow, what I recommend for those of you coming to the Ibn Arabi, if I proposed in the group chat, if I read Baysari each week, because these sections are long, we're going to miss a lot of time. It's going to eat into our time. So what I propose as of tomorrow is that we finish the chapter so you guys continue from where we read the first session, and please jot down notes from your own reading so that then we use the hour on the case study to just have a discussion of the text rather than me coming and just reading the text. Once we get to the actual text of the Fusus al-Hikam, then I will start to read again. Okay, if that's acceptable with everybody, that's the format. We'll continue all the way. So then we can get through a study speedily over the next couple of weeks. And then once that's done, boom, we launch into the Fusus itself. Is that a good idea? But make sure you read that part of the text and take your notes just be ready when we start as of tomorrow, and we just come in and start to discuss the points that Baysari raises in his commentary. We get through that and boom, that's out of the way, and then we launch straight into the Fusus itself. Okay, let's leave that here for today for Suhrawardi, and I'll see all of you who are coming for tomorrow's Ibn Arabi session tomorrow at the same time. Be well, Yahak.